Okay, this is the most nerve-wracking part of any guitar building process. As we start trimming out the neck pocket, it's very precise. If we get off just a little bit, the angle is going to be wrong. On the very first guitar that I built, my mahogany solid Telecaster, when I started doing this process, my router bit, I was trying to cut so deep at once that it actually got enough vibration, it loosened up and slid, and then ended up cutting an extra hole in it about 1/4 of an inch deep. And I had to build a shim to replace that. So I had to route it out deeper than I wanted to, and then put the shim back in and then reroute. So this process is very meticulous. So I just draw it out really well and take my time. Along the way, I'll actually use a scrap piece of wood to check the depth after I've adjusted the depth of my router bit, just to make sure that I'm only taking off as much as necessary. And then I'll do this for my final routing as well. Okay, so we're making our final pass on routing out the neck pocket. This is the most critical moment for this project. So when you get to this point, take your time, stencil out everything in good detail, have extra lighting, keep the dust out of your way, and be patient. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, I know, especially for us guys, but this is the time that we have to be patient on a guitar project. Because I went down in steps with my router, there are a few small loose edges that I'll clean up with a very sharp wood chisel, and it'll straighten up my pocket edges. Okay, that neck pocket came out great. So I'll just go ahead and use the Dremel and clean up some of the edges for my electrical pockets. And then I'll come back and do a little bit of hand sanding right towards the end. Right now I just want to get my dimensions proper so that things will set in and have good clearance. I will also use the Dremel with a sanding bit to just clean up some of the edges and get my lines clean and smooth. I'll also come back and hand sand this later. She might not look like much, and I lost the handle for the adjustment for the 1-inch sander, I don't know, sometime in the last 10 years, so Vise grips will do. But this little fella has been the best sanding tool I have ever found. I've had this for about 25 years. So I'll put some fresh sandpaper on it. I'm going to use about 120 grit on it to get all of my sides down to my template lines. And then I can also use a finer grit around a 300 to smooth it. And then I'll also come back with a hand sander or palm sander later to do some smoothing in. But yeah, this is probably my favorite little tool that I've bought in the last 25 years. The 1 inch is really good for getting inside of these corners and getting a nice clean straight line. For these tighter corners, I'll either use a Dremel with the sanding tool, or I will use a spindle style sander and just put it on my drill so that I can use lower RPMs. Occasionally I'll use the actual drill press, but this little hand sander gives me the opportunity to feel how I'm sanding into the wood. A little 220 grit to the pocket, and on my top I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to start at 220 and I'll end up working my way down to probably 1500 on this top by the time I get finished. So once I get a little bit of oil on this, it's going to look like a piece of glass. Now that I've got my rough sanding done, I'm going to go ahead and put a towel down, and I'll do this for the rest of the process. I really don't want to get any scratches in my surface because this part that you're seeing now is starting to become a finished product. And man, it is getting exciting. Thanks for joining us. I'll use my palm sander so I can get a real good feel of the grain, and I'll use it to polish out any of the lines that I would have left with my 1 inch sander or the round sander. So as you can see, a little bit of polishing and voila.